This video is supported by Squarespace. Hey, Marcus House with you here. We've got a lot to cover today. The story of the largest rocket to ever be created continues at SpaceX's Starbase, with ship and booster work screaming ahead in preparation for the first static fire and launch. NASA's Capstone mission, which is a lunar pathfinding communications cubesat, is set to go on board Rocket Labs Electron. The spacesuit development program finally progresses, with two companies now awarded the contracts by NASA this week. We have the Space Launch System wet dress rehearsal ready to go, awesome updates on the James Webb Space Telescope's first targets, and then loads more.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
We'll start off news this week at the orbital launch site at Starbase. Last week we talked about a pop that was heard as a bunch of tiles fell off Starship 24 during testing on Friday the 27th of May. Workers installed a new section of pipe with expansion loops inside the ship early in the week to replace the sections destroyed. Compared to the damaged pipework we saw removed, this new pipework actually has multiple expansion loops in it. This provides much greater flexibility to prevent excessive stresses in the piping system caused by the thermal expansion and contraction. Due to this, I think it is a reasonable assumption that a lack of these loops possibly caused the original pipework to completely break when pressurized. It seems that pipework smashed rather violently against the inside of the payload bay, causing all those tiles to fall off. It didn't take long to solve the problem, however, as we can see from SpaceX's new installation of the pipe. So although many out there may have been announcing this as a failure, it was only really a minor issue, and development has continued essentially unhindered. Ship 24, it seems, should still be the first to attempt flight to orbit. Crews were also seen adding more raceway aero covers over Ship 24's piping and wiring on the side of the vehicle. As with previous prototypes, this is installed to protect all those more delicate systems from the forces of flight and re-entry. On Wednesday, it looked like a cryo test was underway. The road was closed and we soon saw a tank farm starting to vent, but nothing visible seemed to be occurring on the ship itself. The road was reopened later that evening, leaving us scratching our heads, but on Thursday it was a different story. At about 3 p.m, another test started and frost began to form on Ship 24's methane tank, and around 15 minutes later frost also started to rise on the liquid oxygen tank as well. Once the tanks were fully frosted up and the test concluded, Elon here tweeted sharing the success of this test. That is great to know, and Ship 24 now moves on to the next phase of testing. Now, some exciting news this week which many others seem to have labelled as disappointing. I don't see it this way though. After many months of delays, we were expecting to see the release of the final programmatic environmental assessment from the Federal Aviation Administration by the 31st of May. Instead though, we got a more interesting pushback of the target date to June the 13th. Now yes, this is another delay, but this time it is only a 2-week delay instead of another month. You know what I think this means? Yep, the FAA are confident enough that it will be very soon. Now again, I must stress at this point that there is no evidence that the FAA environmental review delay has had significant impact on SpaceX's orbital flight test at Starbase. Booster 4 was not flight worthy. The launch tower was not ready. In fact, we still see work actively going on to prepare for launch, as we will share yet again this week. Parts of the vertical tank farm were not even compliant, needing these pre-certified horizontal tanks installed instead. This is why you haven't seen Musk tweeting out frustration over the FAA process all this time. That, however, could very soon change though, with Elon saying that they will have a full stack on the pad in a few weeks. At this point, if the FAA delays did continue, I'd expect to see some sparks to start flying. In saying this, just a few days after the 2-week delay announcement, the progress of the assessment was updated to show that Section 4F has also concluded on June the 2nd. This should mean that to successfully complete the programmatic environmental assessment for orbital Starship launches, they should just need to process everything into one final draft. Once those documents are complete, approved and published, all that SpaceX will need to begin the test flight is an FAA launch license. So yes, very exciting times ahead. Elon also gave an update on Super Heavy's upcoming static fire campaign, saying that for the initial static fires of Booster 7, SpaceX will light only one Raptor at a time. Now, we've seen those Raptors being delivered and moved into the wide bay for integration over the past few weeks, of course, with another 2 spotted here by RGV aerial photography. Musk even confirmed this week that all Raptor 2 engines for Starship's orbital flight demo have been built and are being installed. So yes, let's hope 2 weeks is indeed 2 weeks, because this massive event event that we have all been waiting so patiently for is coming real soon. The largest rocket ever constructed, leaving the ground under the mind-bending thrust of 33 Raptor 2 engines. Grid fin installation was underway this week as well, along with more loads of methane deliveries at the launch site continuing. I suspect we are not far off now seeing it rolling down the launch site, hopefully over the next week. RGV Aerial Photography spotted some new armoured plating being prepared for welding onto the orbital launch pad legs. These are certainly needed so that the legs themselves can withstand the heat and the debris from the super heavy booster as it ignites and lifts off. Up the launch tower at the quick disconnect arm, the mechanism that allows the quick disconnect plate to quickly detach to and detach from the ship was tested this week. This has actually had some fairly significant changes to the mechanism itself, and it's the first time that I've seen it in action since it was replaced to fit the updated vehicle design where the quick disconnect panel is up one ring higher. In this new design, a single hydraulic piston attached to the back of the quick disconnect unit pushes the unit forward during extension and then pulls it back to retract. Additionally, a wishbone structure attached to the underside of the quick disconnect unit assists with keeping the entire unit rigid during this movement. All in all, it's a much simpler and stronger looking mechanism compared to what it was before. Over at the production facility, Booster 8's aft section was rolled into the high bay and lifted up onto the welding turntable for stacking with the rest of the liquid oxygen tank. That night at 2:30 AM, the liquid oxygen tank was indeed hooked up to the bridge crane, lifted up and stacked on top of the aft section for about half an hour before it was pulled back off. Was there a problem going on, we thought, as we scratched our heads. Soon after though, up it went again, this time staying there for an hour before it came down again. So yes, I'm not sure what was going on there. Obviously some sort of issue with the fitting that prevented them from completing the stack that day. Of course, SpaceX did get it there in the end, with it being stacked the next day. So there it is, 24 rings tall, awaiting only the final stacking before its main structure is complete. And then we also have progress with Ship 25 having its second forward flap aero cover being added to its nose. A few days later, the nose was moved over to the low bay for the next step. It wasn't all construction this week either. Destruction too. The rest of the old Ship 16 prototype was finally sliced up, with the aft section fully disassembled. It soon entered Highway 4 and headed off to the scrapyard. Now, last week we saw the crew access arm style office building leaving the Starbase facility, and we were unsure where it was being taken to. Well, thanks again to RGV Aerial Photography's eyes in the sky and his views of the Massey's gun range, we now know where it went. I'm wondering if this may mean that it will be used as a mission control for the upcoming orbital flight test. As far as I can tell, the Stargate building used for this is a little too close to use as mission control for a full stack flight. So for the first week in a while, there have been no Falcon 9 launches. We do have the Nilesat 301 launch coming up, along with commercial resupply service mission 25 with Cargo Dragon for NASA. Speaking of which, great news this week with SpaceX being awarded another 5 Crew Dragon missions to the International Space Station. That may even be all of the assignments needed to keep the ISS occupied up until 2030. Awesome to see. I must admit though, I've become quite accustomed this year to seeing at least one Falcon 9 landing each week, but nope, nothing. Instead, shout out today to the amazing Joe Barnard with his first Scout F launch and landing. He is the master of model rocketry. Just check out this crazy thrust vectoring on the ascent. We have stage separation, and then look at that. Almost stuck the landing there on this try as he attempts to bring the future of reusability to model rockets, inspired of course by SpaceX time and time again. If you are not subscribed to his BPS.space channel, you are really missing out. I've tried to get a little model rocket club started here myself. I've just had a little trouble trying to get it off the ground. Yep, subscribe for more crap jokes. Okay, so a mission here that I am so excited to watch is the Capstone mission. More on that in a moment, but first, huge thanks to Squarespace today for supporting this video. Squarespace is a website building service set up for you. It doesn't matter if you're a complete novice with websites or a pro, because there is also great solutions here for big companies as well. If this is a site for yourself though, this is just so easy. Simply head to squarespace.com and browse through the many website templates on offer. There are great ones for a store, for a service that you might like to offer, and even templates for big events like a wedding. Now that could earn you some brownie points with your better half. Just grab a template and start replacing the stock elements and images with your own. Squarespace even has a great stock library if you need to use that. Upload your logo if you have one, and if you don't have one, well, check this out. Squarespace has a logo builder too. Just give your brand a name, spaceship, am I right? And, well, a rocket would be sweet there too. Bam, there you go, you now have a logo. Update your fonts and then change those colours over the entire site in one action. Now it is all about your content. If you want to check it out for yourself, just head to squarespace.com/MarcusHouse and save 10% off the first purchase of a website or domain. You'll find that link in the description below. So why am I so excited about NASA's Capstone mission? In a first for NASA's Artemis program, this mission is set to launch to the moon a little over a week from now, although it was supposed to be launching on the 6th of June on Monday. Anyway, this mission is going to carry this Pathfinder spacecraft into orbit and beyond via Rocket Labs Electron. This will be a defining moment for this young and well-respected launch provider, making this mission their very first deep space assignment and their first use of the lunar photon. This is just an amazing looking vehicle capable of taking the Capstone payload all the way to a lunar orbit. This all-important mission parameter here is to ensure an accurate translunar injection and trip into a near rectilinear halo orbit around the moon, an orbit that will also in future accommodate NASA's Gateway. The journey itself will not be a quick one either, as the trip will use a low energy transfer, meaning around 3 months travel time should be about right for this mission profile. Capstone will test deep space navigation and communication in an effort to help plan for the long overdue crew mission set to return humanity to the lunar surface. In fact, the name lunar photon in this case, while relevant, does not fully convey the true capabilities of this particular vehicle design. In actual fact, its functionality is best categorized for uses well beyond this orbit, which includes destinations such as Venus and Mars. Now, last week you might recall I talked about the issue with NASA's spacesuits and the suspension of spacewalks due to a minor water leak in a helmet. Now there's more information on this one here if you want to know more about that, but great news this week because NASA has announced the companies that have been selected to move forward in developing brand new generations of spacesuits for future Artemis missions and also for their use on the International Space Station. On Wednesday this week they held an event at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, inviting a bunch of media to attend. NASA has awarded contracts to Axiom Space and Collins Aerospace. Now, sadly, neither have really publicly provided a great deal of detail about the products. Axiom, of course, we already know well given their plans to construct the world's first commercial space station and their recent Crew Dragon mission Axiom 1. Lots of nice promotion images though from Collins Aerospace. They will be making some more substantial headlines soon, I suspect, because these suits here are looking great, hopefully very close to their final appearance. So where does this leave NASA's XEMU spacesuit? Well, it seems that the costs and delays grew to such an extent that NASA may have simply put this on hold to continue with these commercial options instead. Both selected companies did say that their systems are already at an advanced state of development and they borrow from the bank of information on the XEMU design, so make of that what you will. If this model becomes as successful as the commercial crew program, I'm all for it. So yes, the new spacesuits are going to be very iconic given their future publicity as we finally advance human exploration in space and on the moon's surface. Just imagine what we will be seeing in the near future, not just with the new spacesuits, but human surface mobility systems, rovers, and just everything that will be needed. Say what you want about the SLS costs, one thing that is certain is what this entire endeavour symbolises: a very big commitment to finally having humans back well beyond low Earth orbit for the first time in decades. From there, a long-term presence at the moon and eventually off to explore Mars. It is absolutely thrilling watching all of this play out. Now, speaking of the Space Launch System, it is soon headed back to Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center for another test. Hopefully, in just a few weeks by mid-June, we will see the SLS finally complete that test, where we are going to see the launch vehicle filled with liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen propellant. This is a full simulated launch process where the countdown will proceed all the way to the point where main engine start would normally occur, essentially testing everything possible without actually igniting the engines. After the 3 failed attempts in this test in April. I sure do hope that we see everything go as planned this time around. There has been quite a lot of criticism online, and I get it. It's been a long, slow and expensive process to get to this point, but that is why NASA are being so careful. The last thing that anyone wants to see is all of that investment ending in a preventable failure. It isn't just the rocket either. It's the crawler, it's the support equipment, and it's the teams all behind this technology, and I'm pretty confident that we're going to see a successful completion of this testing phase, and then next comes the Artemis 1 uncrewed mission. Interestingly, NASA had previously said a date for this flight would not be decided until the wet dress rehearsal. Despite this though, NASA's Administrator Bill Nelson advised the House Appropriations Committee on May 17th that he expects Artemis 1 to launch in August, so assuming testing goes well, we have a rough target here to be looking forward to. The actual timing of the launch is important. They can't just launch at any time. The moon needs to be in a specific position in its orbit around the Earth. Remember, this mission is going to essentially place the spacecraft into a distant retrograde orbit of the moon, having it be further away than any spacecraft built for humans has ever flown. Now, this mission will all occur over the course of around 3 weeks before Orion returns and then splashes down off the coast of California. We have a few Mars updates here too. As we saw recently, the increasing dust storm activity is spelling impending doom for the InSight mission. So what about the little helicopter Ingenuity? Well, NASA has released this footage of its record 25th flight. In this mission, Ingenuity flew around 10 metres above the surface of Mars for a distance of around 704 metres at a speed of 19 kilometres per hour. Now this was the longest in duration flight and the furthest distance covered to date. The little helicopter's highest clocked speed was also achieved as well. In fact, the only record that this mission didn't break was its altitude record, which it was just a few feet shy of. The flight lasted some 160 seconds, so what we see here is a sped up version. Ingenuity was originally designed just for a handful of flights over a 30-sol period, and the programming team is now planning for its 29th flight. Frustratingly, of course, similar to InSight, dust covering its tiny solar array is becoming an increasing issue. While it's going to be a sad day for mission specialists when these science and exploration tools cease to work, they have performed so well. Ingenuity in particular has performed way beyond expectation. In the end though, you can't expect solar powered equipment to have an easy time operating on the surface of a barren planet that is this far from the sun and also is plagued with these dust storms. Some neat updates with the James Webb Space Telescope. The wait is almost over now with its mirror segments beautifully aligned. In fact, it's in its final steps of preparation before starting actual science operations just a few weeks from now. We've even been told recently that the images of the first observation will be released this July. And right after that, it's going to begin the first of many incredible operations. In fact, NASA has provided us with some insights into one of Webb's first scientific missions, which is to investigate these two super-Earths known as 55 Cancri E and LHS 3844b. Now, their orbits are so close to their parent star that an entire year lasts for just a few hours. 55 Cancri E was expected to have been tidally locked, which means that one side always faces its star. But it may turn out that it's more like Mercury here, which rotates 3 times for every 2 orbits. This means that there may actually be a day-night cycle after all. If so, the conditions on these planets would be so extreme that during the day the entire surface of the planet would heat up, melt, and then vaporize to form a very thin atmosphere. In the evening, the vapor would cool and condense to form droplets of lava that would rain back to the surface, turning solid again as night falls. The brand new groundbreaking telescope could detect such changes in the atmosphere and then give us this fantastic new insight that we've never been able to measure in this detail before. Just one of the many amazing observations that it will make in its Cycle 1 Generation Observers program starting in just weeks. Cycle 1 Go is a 6,000-hour program where Webb is going to explore tons of interesting exoplanets, galaxies, stars, and black holes, so I'm extremely excited to see what we're going to find out. China's space agency is also gearing up to launch crew once again to their new Tiangong space station. Late last weekend, the huge Long March 2F rocket was rolled out to the pad in the Gobi Desert to begin preparation for this next mission, Shenzhou 14. Now, this rocket has been standing around for quite some time along with a launcher, just in case there is some kind of emergency up at the space station requiring urgent human assistance. Crew don't often launch from China, so this is a big event for the space agency, and this mission is the 3rd crew mission to the space station and this team is going to be overseeing its continued construction with 2 huge lab modules to be added during their stay. That is going to complete the main structure of the station too, so this is an important endeavour. The 3 taikonauts on board, I believe, are planning to stick around on the station for around 6 months or so, quite similar to the last mission which returned back in mid-April. The station has of course been uncrewed since then, which is quite unusual compared to the International Space Station, where we've had a permanent rotation of crew for over 20 years. There are really only a few exceptions to that, in rare occasions where the station was left empty while a spacecraft such as Soyuz was moved from one docking port to another. But with the exception of that, there's been someone on board the International Space Station all that time. This, I'm certain, is also going to eventually be the case with the Chinese space station after its completion, especially as they're considering making the station available for commercial purposes such as tourist visits and scientific research. So good luck to everybody involved in the launch of the Long March 2F. I'd like to know what you think here when you look at the crew vehicle with the standard launch escape tower on top. It all feels just a little vintage now, doesn't it? If you compare it to a vehicle like Crew Dragon or even Starliner, they both have systems that push the vehicle away rather than pull it. Saying that, Starliner's abort system is part of the service module, which isn't reused. Crew Dragon's abort system is part of the capsule itself, which is reused. So SpaceX for the win. So there you go, you are all caught up on the space news of the week. As always, thanks so much for watching all this way through. I'll be back next Saturday. I'm just so grateful to all of you here helping me what I do. It just blows my mind every single week. If you love the content, like my incredible patrons and YouTube members here scrolling up, every little bit helps, and you can even get those ad-free videos delivered before anyone else gets to see them. The merch store link is below if you want some new gear. The new design I was wearing last week has been a pretty darn popular one. Thanks everybody for that. All that helps as well. Today, here are some links to some deeper dive videos that you might enjoy if you haven't seen them. They aren't really part of the news cycle, so they should continue to be very relevant if you love all of these topics. Thanks again for watching, have an amazing weekend, and I'll see you in the next video.